I am Dr. Adrienne Stevenson, Assistant Dean in the Graduate School and Director of the Office of Graduate Fellowships and Awards. I'm excited to have this time with you today. The role of the Office of Graduate Fellowships and Awards is to assist currently enrolled graduate students with identifying and applying for external fellowships and awards. I want to emphasize currently enrolled because there are a little over 8,000 graduate students at Florida State University, and currently I'm a party of one. So the capacity to provide this support to students that are not currently enrolled is limited. So typically I get a lot of emails from prospective students, and I invite them to this space where I can introduce them to identifying and exploring fellowship and awards options so that when we get to the fall semester, you already have that front loaded and you can go ahead and jump in and start thinking about awards that are a good fit for you. So to get started today, we are going to explore fellowships and awards that are external to the university so that we really can kind of figure out awards that are a good fit for you. We are going to consider the general award application timeline because that will be very, very important as you think about awards that you've identified that you want to apply for, especially considering many of you will be taking classes, you'll be conducting research, you have work that you have to do outside of those things, you may be teaching, and you have other things in your life that you have to manage. So you have to be really, really considerate of the award timeline. The next thing we will talk about is tapping into resources in addition to the Office of Graduate Fellowships and Awards so that you have all of the moving arms and support needed to put together competitive application packets for the awards that you will pursue. So the first thing that I want to talk about are the different types of awards. So as undergraduate students, oftentimes we are very familiar with merit-based funding, okay? And so we come into a space where most of the funding is based on need. When you get to graduate school, most of the funding is merit-based, and merit is broadly defined by the funding agency that is providing the support. So the idea that merit is only related to GPA is very different at the graduate school level. As undergraduate students, oftentimes the level of familiarity with merit is around our GPA. So if you have a 3.5, 3.8, 3.9, or above a 4.0, you're typically in really, really, really good standing academically. But when you get to the graduate level, many of the funding agencies are defining merit based on your scholarly development. And so that will look different for every award. The one thing that I do want to mention, and I will mention this over and over again, is that there is no one size fits all approach when it comes to fellowships, scholarships, awards, and grants. And what I mean by that is every award is going to differ based on the funding agency that is providing the funding support. So merit for one agency might be your research and work in action. And for another agency, it may be your involvement in your discipline. It may be the presentations you've given, it may be publications, maybe presentations at conferences or attendance of those conferences. But just keep in mind that there is no one size fits all approach. And so you will have to look very deeply at the scholarship or the fellowship application to see what it is that the funding agency is looking for their criteria. The other thing that I want to be clear about are the differences between internal and external funding. Internal funding is defined as funding that's coming from within the university, and that can vary as well. That can be from your college, it can be from the department or program that you're in, it can be from the graduate school, because the graduate school does have internal funding that they manage. It can be from the FSU Foundation. It can also be from other entities around campus. What I want you to be aware of is that the Office of Graduate Fellowships and Awards provide support specifically for funding external to the university. So any types of fellowships, scholarships, grants, awards that you identify that are a good fit for you, that you're eligible for, and you want to pursue that are coming from entities outside of Florida State University, the Office of Graduate Fellowships and Awards will assist you with developing your application packet to submit for those particular awards. The good thing is if you identify awards that are coming from internal entities, many of the materials that you will draft for the awards for external fellowships and awards can be tailored for the awards that you might apply for internally. So it's not that we can't assist you at all, but so as to make sure that there is no conflict of interest, we have to make sure that we are only facilitating support for external fellowships and awards. Some of the internal fellowships and awards I am asked to manage, or I'm asked to sit on committees for review. And so that may present a conflict of interest. And in that case, we make sure that we provide the support only for external fellowships and awards. External fellowships and awards can come from a number of places. Can come from federally funded agencies, so government agencies. It can come from foundations, institutes, and associations. It also can come from various organizations and societies. So I want you to keep that in mind as well, because as you are exploring, you will see funding agencies that really kind of run the gamut. They're across the board. So why should you even consider applying for external fellowships and awards? Well, I know the number one thing on your list is the funding. How do I get extra money to support my graduate journey? But in addition to that, I want you all to think about considering applying for fellowships and awards as a part of your ongoing professional development. All of the programs that you mentioned, you're either enrolling in or currently enrolled in, are going to require you to be able to articulate who you are, what you do, and why anybody should care, right? And when you are applying for fellowships, scholarships, and awards, that's the first thing that reviewers are looking for as well. They want to know upfront why they should fund you, right? And so this process is a part of what you need to do to develop professionally as scholars. So I don't want you to think of it as an add-on or additional work. I want you to look at it through the lens of ongoing professional development. In addition to being able to effectively communicate who you are, what you do, and why it's important, you also will be required to continuously develop your writing skills. And so when you are applying for fellowships and awards, you are forced to articulate in writing those things that I just mentioned, who you are, what you do, and why it's important. And so you will develop your writing skills over time. So that's another reason why engaging in this process is important. You gain useful feedback. So the Office of Graduate Fellowships and Awards will provide feedback on documents that you draft, in addition to your faculty and other people that you will have review your documents and provide feedback. It's also really good for building your portfolio. And so as scholars, that is something you do from the time you start your program throughout your career, right? So when you apply for these fellowships and awards, these are things that you get to put on your CV. These are things that potential employers can see. These are things that other people that may be willing to fund you can see as well. So really kind of think of this as an opportunity to build your portfolio. It also gives you an opportunity to network and collaborate with people. Many of the fellowships and awards have cohorts of fellows or scholars that are selected for the awards. And so there's an opportunity there to engage with other scholars, both from this university and from other places, in addition to experts in your field. So really kind of think of this as an opportunity to branch out, secure funding, but also attach yourself to some of the important things in your field by way of the people that are involved in these fellowships and awards. It's also an opportunity to secure funding. So what I want you to keep in mind is that the funding varies. So for those of you that have already secured assistantships, oftentimes fellowships and awards can go on top of those assistantships, or they can supplement them. And so there, for those of you that have the idea that, oh, I already have funding, so I can't apply for additional funding, that is not the case with external fellowships and awards. That is really determined by the funding agency. Again, no one size fits all approach. So there may be one agency that says, if you have this funding, you can't have anything else. There may be another agency that says, you can have this funding in addition to other funding that you have. So you really just have to read into the funding mechanism to see what it is that their stipulations are. The other thing that I wanted to mention is really kind of digging into the details of the funding mechanisms, because again, those will provide you with all you need to know about the stipulations. And if they don't, and you still have a question, most of the awards have a program coordinator, and their job is to provide additional support in the way of answering questions and inquiries that you have about the awards you might be interested in securing. All right. So let's talk about finding the right scholarship or fellowship grant award for you. As graduate students, oftentimes we are tunnel vision. Right? We come in looking for awards to fund our graduate journey, but we're only looking at awards that are specific to our discipline. So I want you to keep in mind that you're a whole person, right? So think of yourself holistically. What are all the things about you, personal, professional, and academic, that make up who you are? Those are things that you want to take into consideration when exploring fellowships and awards, because if not, there are a lot of opportunities that you might miss if you're only looking for things specific to your discipline. There are fellowships and awards that exist for degree programs. So for those of you that are in master's programs, there are fellowships and awards specific to masters. There's some that are specific to doctoral programs, everything from the JD to the PhD to the EDD. Some of them don't specify, they just say doctoral, so you can explore those as well. And there are funding opportunities for specialty degrees. Again, you have to look at the award to determine what you are eligible for or not. There are also funding opportunities for research. So for you to conduct your research, for you to get supplies for your research, again, that's going to be based on the funding mechanism. There are funding opportunities to travel. So I have a lot of graduate students that have an interest in cultural and ambassadorial experiences abroad. So Fulbright is one of those awards that supports that. There's the Critical Language Scholarship that allows you to do language acquisition. There's the Boren Fellowship that allows you to study areas of defense related to the United States, but also pursue language acquisition. There are opportunities to go and study abroad. There are opportunities to teach abroad, also opportunities to travel within the United States to do some of the work that you need to do for your study. So many of the students that are doing museum studies or archival studies will travel within the US to other places to do those studies. I have a lot of STEM students that go to labs, national labs throughout the US to collaborate with other people to do their work. So just keep in mind that there are funding opportunities for travel. There are dissertation completion opportunities. So you will look up funding awards that will support you with your dissertation. And so while you may not be eligible for those now, those are things to keep on your radar so that you know what is required to apply for those awards in the future. There are also awards that are specific to demographics, and that is broadly defined. I want you to keep that in mind because they may be specific to gender, they may be specific to ethnicity, they may be specific to nationality. They also may be specific to populations that you're planning to work with and or study. So be mindful because you may see something in the title that does not apply to you, but may be related to populations or groups of people that you're working with. Oftentimes I'll have graduate students see the title and say, well, that's not for me. And then when they look at the details of the award, they recognize that these are populations that they're working with, and they therefore are eligible to apply. So, just dig into the detail, because oftentimes the titles may be a bit misleading, or they give you an eye into the award, but not all of the detail related to the award. So think about those demographics for the types of awards you might be exploring as well. And then the last one is potential. There are a number of funding opportunities that fund potential. So what I mean by that is they are looking to fund someone to do something in the future. The National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program, NSF GRFP, is a prime example. They are funding you now to pursue a career in STEM in the future. So they're investing in you now so that the likelihood that you will enter the STEM workforce will be greater. So in their application, you have a proposal that's a research statement and also a personal statement. If they fund you, you don't have to do the proposed work. You don't have to stick to the proposed project, but that's because they're funding potential for the future. Not every award is like that. Some of them, what you propose is what they're expecting you to do. Okay, so just keep that in mind, because as you're exploring these databases, I want you to make sure that you consider yourself as a whole person and you're looking for awards that really support you personally, professionally, and in your scholarly development. There are awards at every stage of the graduate journey. So I'm glad that you all are joining me today, because I oftentimes have graduate students that wait until their second or third or fourth year in their program. At that point, many of the awards that you were eligible for in your first year have already passed, right? So this is a good opportunity to just think about, from the eligibility of the awards, what you are eligible to apply for. Again, there's no one size fits all approach. So you will have to look at the award to determine, when you can apply, what, makes you eligible, and what their components of their application are. But just keep in mind that this is a good time to explore those opportunities, put them in a place where you can have them all in one place and see them. And then ones that you're not eligible for now, but maybe eligible for in the future, you can keep on your radar. So at the doctoral level, you can apply, at the master's level, and at the specialist level, and every year of your program, depending on the eligibility of the award you're interested in applying for. So here are a few tips for getting started, and these are very, very, very important. Many of you have contacted me because you have an interest in securing funding for the upcoming year. With external fellowships and awards, that's not the way that it works. So there is an application cycle, and typically there's about a 6 to 12 month window from the time you apply to the time that funding is dispersed. So that application cycle consists of submission of the application, review of the applications by a committee or whatever process that the funding agency has set up for review, selection of the award recipients, announcement of the award recipients, and then disbursement of funding. And that typically is about a 6 to 12 month window from the time you submit the application to the time that funding is dispersed. So for external fellowships and awards, you typically are applying a year in advance of when you would like to receive that funding. The fellowship award season never ends. So the majority of the deadlines for fellowships and awards is in the fall, but there are some fellowship and award deadlines in the spring and also in the summer. That doesn't mean that funding is not dispersed with a quicker turnaround time, but there are less awards that disperse in that manner. The majority of them, you apply for them now or in the fall, and it's announced in the spring, and that funding is dispersed next fall. And that's almost every award that I can think of. Again, there are a few of them that disperse a little bit quicker than that. So just keep that in mind, because there's not a quick turnaround time for external fellowships and awards. And many of the inquiries that I've received are about funding for the upcoming semester. You're going to want to explore a number of funding databases. And so I will provide you all with links to a number of funding databases for you to explore. You're going to want to generate a list of funding opportunities to pursue. And so I've provided you with an Excel spreadsheet, which is really just kind of a way to jumpstart managing the awards that you identify. And it allows you to sort by deadline, by application component. So all of those things that you need to keep in mind to be reasonable about what it is that you pursue. You definitely have to dedicate time to requesting documents and preparing documents. So the idea that you can use one application for multiple awards, it really doesn't work unless, of course, those awards are similar in nature. So oftentimes as undergraduate students, there's this idea that, oh, I have this personal statement, I can use it for everything. You have to tailor all of your application materials to the mission and vision of what you're applying for. So they will outline who they are, what they do, and what their funding opportunity is, right? Then they will outline their criteria for selection. That criteria for selection is typically what the reviewers use to rank and review applications. So it's almost like a rubric. You should use it as a rubric as well. So when you're looking at funding opportunities, whatever their criteria is, you want to take that into account as you are crafting and drafting your application materials, because that's what they're going to use to review and select, okay? So searching funding databases. This is one of the most important things that you came for today, is really to find out how to identify the money, where the money is. So I'm going to send this presentation to you all, and all of these funding databases that you see on the screen are hyperlinked, okay? So there's Rutgers. They have a really good funding database. I'm going to pull it up in a minute because I want you to see it. There is George Mason, UCLA, Duke, the University of Illinois, and it's not restricted to these. These are ones that I found to be most useful in my support provided to students, but there are a number of other databases that you can explore. The one at the top in the middle is the one that I want to talk about most, and that is Pivot. As currently enrolled students at FSU, you will have access to Pivot. Pivot is open to the entire campus community. It is a third-party funding database that FSU subscribes to. We pay a good amount of money over the course of a year for an annual subscription. This database is really, really great because it drills down to country of citizenship. So a lot of my international students who have difficulty finding awards in other databases are able to put in their country of citizenship, and this database will generate a list taking into account that particular filter. There are other filters that you can put in as well, and so I'll go into the site to show that to you. But there's going to be a number of databases that you're going to explore, and from these databases, as you start to identify awards based on fit, you can populate them into the Excel spreadsheet that I provided. You can populate them other places as well, but that's a good opportunity to organize the information, color code, do whatever it is that you want to do to keep that information front and center as you start to think about what you want to pursue. Okay, so here is a look-see into the Excel spreadsheet that I provided you when I sent the invite. So I did put a spreadsheet in there for master's and one for PhD, but they're exactly the same. I think what's most important is to populate information about the award, to put in the website, put in the deadline for the award, and any of the application components. And I typically suggest you do this before exploring the website in detail. I say that because websites have tabs that have more tabs that have more tabs. So when you get excited about an award and you start exploring a particular website, you can get burned out before you get started because you've already spent 30 minutes to an hour in that one website. So my thing is to identify awards, look at the eligibility, see if you're eligible. If you are eligible and the mission of that award aligns with who you are and what you're planning to do, populate this information and move on. Then once you have that list generated, come back to this and then start exploring those websites. You can also create tabs at the bottom for various types of awards. So there may be awards you want to pursue right now. So you can have current opportunities. There might be awards that you want to pursue in the future, some specific for travel. However you choose, your brain chooses to organize information. you can kind of use this spreadsheet to do that. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to stop my share, because one of the most important things that I want to do is to look at those databases. So this is the Grad Fund website, and as you can see, you can explore it by keywords. You can explore it by discipline. You can explore it by stage of study, which is really, really nice, because in some of the other databases, especially Pivot, when they say graduate student, they lump all of the awards for different degree programs together. So when you're in Pivot, while they have all of the other nice filters to help you generate a more specific list for you, when you look through those awards, you're going to have to filter through them individually for ones that are master's versus doctoral degree based. In Rutgers, they allow you to look at all of the different stages of study. So everything from master's to early graduate to dissertation to postgraduate. And that's really nice, because now the list that's generated is going to be specific for the degree program that you're in. They also allow you to sort by citizenship. However, there are pros and cons for every site. So for this site, you're either international or US citizen, whereas in Pivot, you can drill down to the country of citizenship. So they all have different things that make them a pro or give them a bump in how you explore information. There's also the University of Illinois that has a fellowship finder. And so here you can sort by field, you can sort by citizenship, you can sort by stage of study, award type, and then they have other eligibilities. And so to answer Brittany's question, there are some that are specific for University of Illinois students, right? There's some specific for underrepresented students, for women. And so you can say all and get all of them and then determine which ones are a good fit for you, or you can be more selective and put in the things that that you identify with as far as what they have listed here. When you hit search, it's going to generate a list very similar to what will happen with Grad Fund and some of the other sites. In Pivot, what you would need to do as a Florida State student is create an account. And so I do another meeting similar to this one, where we actually go into Pivot together and navigate that space for you to really kind of think about how to best use it to identify awards that are a good fit for you. But I'm going to front load with a little bit of information to get you started, because I've used Pivot enough to know that it's not as intuitive as it seems. So I oftentimes will provide the website to students, and then they say, well, I didn't find anything. And I ask for a little bit of information, and now we have 500 results. So I'm going to front load with a little bit of information so that when you explore Pivot on your own, you know enough to get started, okay? So the first thing you would do in Pivot is click on funding. So funding is right here in the top left-hand corner of the screen. You would click on funding, and then you would click here on advanced search, okay? Once you click on advanced search, it is going to take you to the page with the filters that I mentioned, okay? So all of these things on the left-hand side are what I consider to be filters. So a little bit of information to get you started. Free money is free money, so I typically suggest that you do not put a filter on amount, okay? If we were face-to-face, I would be looking around the room to make sure that nobody is selecting anything when it comes to amount. So you don't want to restrict the amount of money that somebody could possibly give you for a funding opportunity. So don't select anything for amount. For deadlines, I typically say to leave this one clear as well. However, we do have people that are in accelerated programs where once they enter FSU, they only have 12 months before their program ends. And so in that case, I would say to put in a deadline selection so you can see those awards that have a quicker turnaround time. But for everybody else, once your list is generated, you can sort by deadline. So that is why I typically say to stay away from selecting anything for deadline. For applicant institution and location, You can put in the United States. Florida State is in the United States. So this is a new filter that wasn't there before. For activity location, you are going to start with Florida because that is where FSU is. But if you have an interest in pursuing study, research, or any other opportunities in other places, put as many activity locations as you would like. You are not restricted to only putting in Florida, but you do want to start with that. And then there's the filter for citizenship that I mentioned. For funding type, I typically say to put in dissertation thesis, even if the program that you're in is not dissertation thesis based. The reason I say that is because I found over time that Pivot associates graduate student funding opportunities with that language. And so there are things that are not even dissertation thesis related, but they fall under the umbrella of what Pivot organizes for graduate student opportunities when you make this selection. So go ahead and make that selection under funding type. I also would encourage you to put in scholarship, training, or bursaries. And that's what I would say start with. Some of these other things are more broadly defined, and so you're going to get opportunities that are all over the place. So those are the two that I would start with, and then you can go back and play around with the other selections. For applicant type, I'm going to scroll down. You can see that there are a number of things that you can look through and determine what you identify with as your applicant type, and you can make those selections. For funder type, I say leave this blank. You don't want to limit just like with the amount, the type of funding institution that could support you. So I wouldn't put anything there, nor would I put anything for the country of funder. Leave it blank. What is most important in Pivot is the keyword function. This is where you're going to get the bang for your buck in Pivot. So I want you to make a note of this. Pivot does not know all of the language that is associated with who you are and what you're studying. And as a matter of fact, it might be more restrictive in how they organize information and based on how you communicate your area of study. What I mean by that is I'm a pharmacologist. So my PhD is in neuropharmacology and toxicology. When I put in neuropharmacology, Pivot says no, that doesn't exist. There are no results for that. I studied this for 6 years, right? I have a PhD in it, so I know that it exists. But what you have to do is you have to put in those words associated with what you study or what your interests are, and then explore the terms that Pivot associates with them. So for those of you that are visual, like I am, I'm going to give you an example. You put in education. You see this laundry list? You don't want to do that to yourself. So if you search with just the word education, you're going to get things related to all of these things. That's not what you want to do. You want to put in the word education, look through this list, and then identify those terms that Pivot associates with the area more specific to your interest. From left to right, this is education is going to be the broad umbrella term. In the middle is going to be a little more specific, and then on the right is going to be very specific. You want to keep that in mind with your search, because if you put in terms that are too specific, it's going to decrease your results. As you start to broaden those terms for search, then you'll start to see more opportunities. So I want you to keep that in mind with your search, right? Don't just select things because you can't see now what Pivot associates with that. So you want to write it down. So you want to have some note-taking mechanism when you use Pivot, so that as you put in, psychology, right? You want to be able to select what in psychology is your interest. Somebody said sociology. You want to be able to select what in sociology is your interest. If you're interested in law, you want to be able to select what under that umbrella you're interested in. So this will get you started with Pivot, okay? All of those other sites are very selective based on categories. Pivot is not like that. This will at least get you started so that you can generate a list of funding opportunities you might want to explore. Once you have the terms, then this top row right here, that's where you want to put those terms. So you might want to put science, you might want to put STEM, you might want to put education, right? So you put those terms up here and then you search. And you see I only have 8 results, right? But it might be because I didn't select any of my filters either. So you want to play around with that. So that's a jump start on Pivot for all of you. So we've gone through Pivot, Rutgers, University of Illinois. I also will send you a link to the FSU Foundation. Recently, in the last year or so, they have generated a database that you can go in and explore funding opportunities internal to the university. You can use keywords. See, I have graduate student here, but you're not limited to that. And there were 323 results with graduate student, okay? So I'm gonna take that and actually drop that link into the chat for those of you that want to jump into exploring that particular database before you receive the follow-up email. So those are the different databases that you can explore. If you align that with the Excel spreadsheet that I provided, that's where you start to identify based on fit, based on eligibility. And then you start thinking about, of these, which ones do I want to pursue, okay? There's also funding opportunities under the graduate school's website. And so we are overhauling this space, but for now, you would go to funding and awards, click on graduate school fellowships and grants, scroll to the bottom, and there's going to be a box for prospective students and for current students. Definitely look at those awards. Look at the guidelines, which are normally at the bottom of each one. The application timeline is there, along with instructions for submission and the deadline. So that's definitely something that you want to keep in mind as well. So the Office of Graduate Fellowships and Awards provides workshop opportunities throughout the academic year, every semester, specific to various types of awards, but also the supplemental materials that you need in order for you to craft and draft your application. So what I mean by that is we offer a workshop on crafting and drafting the personal statement. We do one on the basics of proposal writing. We do one on letters of recommendation, on writing the CV, all of these things that may or may not be components of the application, but oftentimes are. So we give these workshops throughout the year. Most of the time they are facilitated by recipients of awards. So these are people who have experiences with applying for fellowships and awards. And so not only are they providing you insight on content, but they're providing you insight through their experiences. So I will provide you the link with where you can find the workshops that we will offer for this upcoming academic year. To answer the question about the letters of recommendation, yes, almost all award applications require letters of recommendation. You want to be very strategic about who you identify to write your letters of recommendation. So what I mean by that is, same comment I made about your personal statement. Your documents can't be the same for every award. You really want to think about the mission and vision of the award that you're applying for and who can speak about you related to that award. There used to be a time where you could just ask for a general letter of recommendation and students would use that for everything they applied for. Letters of recommendation are makers and breakers of award applications. I'm a reviewer for the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program. I have been for the last 4 or 5 years. I'm also a reviewer for the Ford Foundation Fellowships. And I can tell you as a reviewer that we look deeply at those letters. Those letters add an added component to the materials that you provide for your packet. They say things that you don't have the space to say, right? So you want to make sure that the people that are providing those letters, they know a little bit about the award and about you as it relates to the award. I typically suggest that students provide their letter writers with a little blurb about the award they're applying for, you can snag that from the website. You can grab that from the website. I also suggest that you give them the criteria for selection. What are the things that the reviewers are looking for? Because those are things they can focus on when they're writing the letter. If you have your CV or resume or personal statement ready, you can provide them with that as well. But if you're asking faculty members, previous employers, mentors for letters, they typically only have a little bit of time. And so those added components will help them as they put together the letter. You do not want to wait until the last minute to ask your letter writers for the letters. So you want to ask them at least 4 to 6 weeks in advance of a deadline, because you need to buffer in time for a friendly reminder, okay? So you definitely want to do that. You also do not want to populate their contact information into a portal that sends them a link before you ask them to write the letter. So there's some etiquette to requesting letters of recommendation. You want to ask the person in advance. And if they say yes, then you can put their information into this portal that sends them a link saying, Adrienne Stevenson is asking for you to write her a letter of recommendation. For the most part, personal statements are asked for in every application. They're very different in what they ask for. So one might be an essay, another might be responses to prompts. It's really going to depend on the award. Not every award requires a research statement, but some of them do. So again, this is going to fall under what are the application components for that particular award. But we do have folks that will come in and help you to really kind of think about how to craft and draft those materials. So I'm going to back up to OGFA Resources. We have a number of databases or booklets that are on OGFA's website. I'll show that to you quickly. And these are hyperlinked, and they have tons of pages of awards. They're not comprehensive, so they do not include all of the awards that exist. But in addition to the databases that I'm providing you links to, you can look through these booklets that the office has put together, specifically keeping in mind awards that we know our students have been successful in applying for, okay? So how we can assist you. Beyond this meeting here, we will do meetings that help you to navigate Pivot and other databases. We do one-on-one meetings. So once you identify awards that you want to apply for, you can follow up with me via email. You don't have to submit a meeting request anymore. And we can have some one-on-one time to really kind of think through what you've identified and if it's a good fit moving forward. As you craft and draft documents, my office will provide review and feedback. So I'm working with Fulbright applicants right now. Oftentimes there's about 6 to 8 iterations of a draft, and that's normal. So for those of you that think I'm gonna craft this and be done, oftentimes my most successful recipients go through about 6 to 8 iterations of their draft before, and Zachary's shaking his head. That is normal. That's a normal part of the process. We have workshops and info sessions, so many of the funding agencies will come in on campus to do campus visits, or they'll Zoom in to do info sessions about their different awards. And then we have other application tips and resources that we provide. I'm going to stop my share because I definitely want to show you something that we recently within or have gone live with in the Office of Graduate Fellowships and Awards, and you might really like it. So we have a database that we put together of all of the students at FSU that we are aware of that have won awards from 2011 to 2020. This is live and on OGFA's website. You can sort by college. So if you want to just look at students in arts and sciences, you can sort by department. If you want to just look at students in psychology or sociology in your area, you can sort by year. So you can say any year, I want to see everything from 2011 to now. Or if you want to look at particular years. This gives you an idea of what we have a successful rate with applying for FSU students. You can all of the awards are hyperlinked. So you can click on the hyperlink, it'll take you to the award so that you can see what award has been won. The other thing that it allows for is peer-to-peer connection. So this is an opportunity for you to see somebody who has already won an award and possibly connect with them, get an idea from them of their experience, and they might even share their application materials with you. So this is a really good database to look at as far as our success rate at Florida State University. And then let's see, I think that was the only thing that I wanted to share with you, in addition to previous workshops that we've provided. All of those can be found here, and they might have the presentation connected to it as well. So you can explore the workshop archive on OGFA's website and kind of get an idea of those workshops that we offer as well. So really, the goal of this presentation was really to jumpstart your exploration of fellowships and awards. All of you are different in who you are, what you study, and what you endeavor to do. So I can't provide you with that list. A lot of times students will email me and say, this is who I am, this is what I'm interested in, what should I apply for? That's not the way that it works, right? So you know you better than anybody. So now that you have the resources to explore the opportunities, now you can just jump in, identify them, be reasonable, right? You have all of these other things going on in your life. So you're not applying for 20 awards at one time. You really want to think about what's reasonable, especially within components, deadline, and all of those other things.